Welcome back. Our guest, Dr. Paul Alaje, an economist, entrepreneur, consultant, finance expert, educator, and industry leader, has joined us this morning. Thank you for joining us this morning, Dr. Paul. It's such a pleasure to have you on the show.
So very much for having me. My beautiful morning to you and to our viewers across the world.
All right, that's beautiful. So let's jump right in. Now, we have seen, Nigeria's economy grow by 4.23% in the second quarter. But then, people often say that economic growth does not always improve, the daily lives of every Nigerian. So how do we explain that the economy is growing while food prices and unemployment are still high? What really is the problem?
Okay, yeah, so thank you so very much. It's a common question that people ask when we use GDP as a measure of what is happening to the economy. What we have seen is that Nigeria GDP growth rate for Q2 2025 has grew by 4.23% according to the National Bureau of Statistics. What it means is that when you look at total monetary value in real terms, in real sense, there is a growth compared to what it was this time last year. So that growth is what we are now discussing. Now, what you may see is that Nigerians will say, oh, we didn't feel the impact of this growth. Now, the challenge here is that GDP is not the best measure of what is happening to an economy. Is not the best measure. There are arguments. So if two of us are the only one living in an economy and each of us contributed 100 naira or spent 100 naira or earned 100 naira, and something happened that I now earn 200 naira. When they look at, no, I earn another 100 naira, so my total becomes 200. When you look at the growth rate, 100 that you had before, 100 that I have, and my own new 100 naira. Now, when you look at the growth rate, you say that the economy has grown by 50%. But in the real sense, it is me that added 50%. You are still on 0%. So when we discuss, you say, no, but your own economy has not changed. I say, oh, but mine has changed by 100%. Eventually, what we are referring to is that GDP does not show distribution of income. So is income equitably distributed? That is why many don't feel the impact of increase in GDP in their life. So can we say that the economy has grown? According to Bureau of Statistics, the answer is yes. But is this income well equitable? Well, from survey from the people, the answer is no. So yes, economy has grown. Perhaps it is for those who have seen the growth in their businesses, in the economy, they felt the impact, but not on the entire economy. Well, if you start with the numbers, you see that the Q1 report was 3%, but for Q2, it's now higher than what it gave us in Q1.
All right, then, but how soon can, Nigerians expect to feel real relief in the market? Because going by your
explanation, a number of things. Yes, thank you so much. A number of things apart from what you have in beyond what you have in GDP. When you see reduced inflation, can I be very honest with you? Actually, this GDP number in nominal terms is over 19%. Because of high inflation at 20% plus, that is why the real GDP reduced from the real 19% GDP growth rate to 4.23% GDP growth rate. So imagine inflation is lower. More Nigeria will impact. You will be impacted positively. I will be impacted positively. Only if inflation number can go lower. Two, how Nigerians can participate is when we make more economic environment viable. I give you an instance. From this number, one of the things that grew the least is manufacturing as part of industry. Manufacturing grew only by 1.6%. And an economy that have our types of composition, one of the things that should grow sporadically and significantly should be manufacturing sector. So manufacturing grew very slowly and agriculture grew only moderately. So those two sectors where you find economic miracles for high for nations with high population did not grow as expected. Therefore, you can say that we are not meeting up with those targets that will make many Nigerians feel they will feel the impact. Therefore, again, here is the point. How soon can they start feeling those impacts? When we're able to reduce our inflation to single digits, that's one. Two, at a time when we're able to boost those sectors that are not having that the GDP, that their numbers are growing very slowly, then those who work within the sector, we have the impact. I can tell you that oil sector saw a major rebound, and it also contributed. There was growth in oil contribution according to the number that was recently released. Does that mean that the oil sector is bad and oil sector rebound? No, I don't think so. I think that we need to also do more to make non-oil sector grow even more sporadically.
But then talking about inflation, and then you rightly stated that, inflation is still very high at around, 24 to 26%. So is this growth really stronger than inflation, or are people still losing purchasing power?
We're losing purchasing power, clearly speaking. Purchasing power is emaciating because of high inflation. When you look at inflation around that period, inflation has even reduced now to about 20%. But as of that time, inflation was much higher than 20%, but less than 25%. So if that is the period we are referring to, which of course is what is in conversation here, purchasing power has been eroded. Don't believe what I told you. Believe the Bureau of Statistics. Bureau of Statistics says that if we are not going to make provision for inflation, this GDP number grew by 19%, which we call nominal GDP in economics. But when we make provision for inflation, this GDP growth rate has now reduced from over 19% to 4%. What has caused reduction? Inflation. So inflation is the invisible hand that you don't know, I don't know, but it's taking money from us. Why? Increase in general price level, average price level in the economy. So this is what is happening. If we can reduce inflation, then we can see more impact on the economy.
All right. While I was, giving the introduction for the discussion segment, we saw the oil sector, recording over 20% growth, in the last quarter. And, it shows that it is largely, it has largely, driven the overall numbers. So how sustainable is this, given that, Nigerians past struggles with the oil dependency?
Yes, so this only tells us that we still largely depend on oil. From what we saw, the number says 20.46% year on year is what we have from oil sector. Meanwhile, non-oil sector, the growth is only 3.64%, which is really abysmal compared to what the counterpart oil sector did. What we know is that there is a major rebound that seems to favor oil sector. Meanwhile, the non-oil sector remains largely weak. So here is it. Dependency, it still shows that we have high level of strong dependency on oil sector. And this is what likely led to the growth in oil. Meanwhile, what we should be doing is to build the weak manufacturing sector that grew by only 1.6%, unlike what we have this moment today.
Okay, then I'm talking about, jobs and businesses. Many young Nigerians say that they don't see growth when it comes to, jobs and even, business opportunities. So in your own view, which sectors are truly creating jobs today in Nigeria?
That is creating jobs. If you go to service sector creates a lot of jobs in Nigeria. Agriculture is also creating jobs in Nigeria. Sadly and unfortunately, this this growth, some persons have even classified it as jobless growth. Some have called it jobless growth risk. I think that is a term that is now being used. That's the phrase that is now being used to describe the recent number. Why? Because it was largely driven by over 20% growth rate in oil sector. We know that oil sector don't contribute much to our GDP numbers. What contributes more to our GDP number is the non-oil sector, which includes agriculture, manufacturing, service sector, and so on and so forth. So, but agriculture grew very slowly, while the manufacturing even had a reduction in its growth to only 1.6%. So what we should be focusing on rather is how do we boost non-oil sector without jettisoning what oil sector has done.
Okay, so Nigerians are more particular about realities. I mean, that is the only way they can be able to, understand and believe that really the country's GDP is going down. So let's bring it to, our daily life. What does GDP growth means for a Nigeria that earns, let's say, 100,000 naira a month? And okay, let's say, for example, I'm a market woman. How does 4.2% now, how does that growth change my life, for example?
So I will do a very brief recap on what national income is. National income, permit me to be a bit technical, but I will try as much as possible to break it down for non-economists to understand what I am saying. But so just permit the first jargon I will say. It says Y, which is the national income, is the same as household consumption, what market women bought, what you consume, what I consume, and you add to that the investment in the economy, whether you are investing in small businesses, large business, your market women that are invested, plus government expenditure, but from that expenditure remove taxes plus net income from abroad. So when you put this together, it gives you national income. In fact, in economics we call it national income accounting. Now when you have more money in the economy, the interaction between household and firms, that's industry, that's businesses, that interaction will make you have more. So if there is a growth in what happened within an economy, it is expected that households, household which includes families, father, mother, those that are economic agents in household, they are going to get more. But when that growth is small, then it also means that they may not also have quite so much in terms of what gets to them, what gets to them. It must also mean that household is contributing less. It might even mean that people at home are now jobless. So the higher it is, the better. But unfortunately, in the initial analogy I gave you, two people can be in an economy. One made 100%, the other one made 0%, but we assume that they are both made income because those are the major demerits of using gross domestic product as a measure of how an economy is performing. In the real sense, there are other parameters that can be used, which is what is happening to income. We call it Human Development Index. What is happening to income? What is happening to education? What is happening to health? But that is not what is in fact. I must say that there are other institutions that use that to measure the performance of economy around the world. Now, Nigeria is one of those, and we can also check where Nigeria is placed among Committee of Nations when we are using those parameters to determine the level Nigeria is. But by and large, I must say that gross domestic product is not sufficient. It's not that gross domestic product is bad, but I'm saying that it is not sufficient. It's necessary, but not sufficient. If we must use it, we need to look at what economists call Gini coefficient. Gini coefficient is an expanded way of measuring how income is distributed among Nigerians or within an economy. For Nigeria, income is not well distributed. And how do we well distribute income should be the question. To answer that question, we need to share part of revenue that we get. We need to share it. We need to distribute it on critical infrastructure, which include roads, you are seeing in Abuja, and part of Lagos rail. And we also need to invest heavily in education. We need to invest in health. We need to invest in quite a number of things. Why? When you earn that income and you are saying you are not feeling the impact, let me tell you why. One of the reasons why you can feel the impact is that school fees have increased. The money you pay for your daughter in school, if it was 200,000 2 years ago, chances are that school fees would have been 250 to 350,000. So, but if you have public school that is of quality, that can match up with any private school, the money you earn would have remained in your pocket. But it's not remaining in your pocket today. Why? Because The cost of sending your child to school has increased. The same with health. Are we saying that if people have common ailment, they can walk to any hospital and get quality treatment? If that is not the case, what people earn will not be enough, and their disposable income will be used to buy fewer and fewer things. That's a call for a concern.
Okay, thank you for that analysis. Now, the IMF, wants that inflation may rise to 37% in 2026. Now, do you think this could, destroy the process we are seeing now? And what's the worst that could happen if it does?
We don't see inflation go to 36%. IMF may need to go and rejig their numbers. That IMF said it does not mean it's necessarily true. There are quality economics also in IMF, but from time to time, we have had to correct their numbers. Because if they don't look at the source of data very well, they may end up in assumption. Could Nigeria inflation go up? The answer is yes. Could it go up as much as 36% by 2026? The answer is no. And if you ask me, I'll tell you that Nigeria inflation has been rebased. Most of the things we have seen is rebase effect. Why you even see inflation reducing? It's a result of rebase effect. So if inflation will grow, there will be a number of things that will happen. First, you are going to start with fuel scarcity. And the price of PMS will go up. And that is why I wish federal government and state government don't joke with the discrepancies or the disagreement between Dangote and some unions. We need to take it very seriously. We need to solve the problem very seriously. Too, federal government needs to support another refinery to give us effective competition against the Dangote refinery. Not because we want to run Dangote business down. If we do, we will burn our finger. In fact, we must also support Dangote refinery to be functional. But we need other refineries to compete with Dangote refinery. So the environment that we may need, we need to provide that for the other refineries to function. If we don't, then we might have to blame ourselves for not doing this, even doing it on time.
All right.
That said,
okay,
we also need
Dr.
to...
Paul, we don't have enough time, but quickly before I let you go, I would love to hear your view. What specific steps should Nigeria take to diversify growth beyond oil and ensure more inclusive development? Quickly.
Thank you. We need to grow our energy supply. We are currently doing about 5,000 megawatts. That must grow sporadically in the next 5 years to between 15,000 to 20,000 megawatts. We can look at different energy mix beyond hydro or gas. We need to look at energy mix. Those who are managing energy production today, if they are not capable, government needs to sign new agreement with those who can provide us with effective energy supply, starting with our industry before our homes. When we do this, job will rebound, job will be abundant for many Nigerians. We will stop importing poverty, disguising as clothes, disguising as phones, disguising as television.
Right.
We will now be importing things that will make us eradicate poverty, which are manufacturing equipment. But remember, anytime we import poverty, what we give away are jobs. So we need to reverse that by making jobs remain in our economy and taking away poverty by importing things that will help us produce rather than things that we consume as final products.
Thank you, Dr. Paul Alaje, economist, entrepreneur, consultant, finance expert, educator, and industry leader, for joining us this morning and helping us make sense of today's topic.
Thank you so very much for having me. Have a beautiful day ahead.
You're welcome. And that is all we have for you this morning on our discussion segment. We'll take a short breather now, and when we come back, we'll dive into reviewing our national dailies. We'll be back shortly.